Once they start to see the price of silver breach and move above $30 an ounce, once we start to see gold moving towards my $2,400 price target that I expect to see within the next 12 months, that is when investors are going to start piling into it because they're seeing these new price levels being hit in US dollar terms. And it's going to create an avalanche.
Today, we're joined by a special guest, Bald Guy Money. We're going to talk about the silver price, demand for silver. Is silver stuck? Because everywhere we look, we're hearing about skyrocketing demand for silver, except from the investor source. Bald Guy, welcome to Ron's Basement.
Thanks, Ron, for having me back. It's been a while since we've done this, but I'm really happy to be back, and I'm happy that we're doing this again.
Well, I know my viewers totally enjoyed our last interview that we did together. You have such insight into the metals markets. Are you hearing this, that everywhere we look, there's huge demand for silver, but on the investment side, we're getting data that shows is that the missing piece of the puzzle for silver?
Well, I think there are numerous factors that are kind of coming together that are negatively impacting the price of silver right now. Let's start with the investor point, though, because investors, especially retail, so we're talking about amateur investors, just regular people like you and me, are notoriously driven by emotion. And when you look at silver, and I did a video more than a year ago now, kind of showing how investor demand doesn't significantly pick up until the price goes up. Because people are anticipating that what's happening right now is going to continue as a trend moving forward, instead of taking advantage of the moments when the price is depressed like it is right now. When we're talking about the other factor that is influencing the price of silver, and this is a no-brainer, and I talked about this also on my channel a couple months ago, is the fact that industrial activity, as measured by the PMI manufacturing index, and it's something that I always look at to see as a leading indicator of where the price of silver is going. And this is an index that measures manufacturing activity, right? And if this index is below 50, that means that manufacturing is actually contracting. And we can see on the PMI manufacturing index on the global level that we've seen a prolonged period of contraction. And there's no way that silver price can significantly rise until we see some improvements in what's happening in the PMI manufacturing index. That's number one. And once we see the price start to react to that a bit more, only then will we see investors start to pile into silver, which will then drive the price even higher. But I don't expect that to happen until we see significant moves on the price of gold. And that's really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for gold to lead here and then silver to follow roughly 6 months after we see the breakout in the price of gold.
Yeah, you bring up some great points. I hadn't thought about that, Bald Guy. As I'm looking at the silver price, that a much improved gold price could have a big impact on the silver price. I mean, eventually silver follows gold, so I appreciate you bringing that up. And we are seeing huge demand for gold. Every indication that I'm reading is saying that gold demand is at levels that we haven't experienced for several decades at this point. What about the prospect of inflation? I want to ask you about that. I have this theory that next year that the table's set for a potential second wave in inflation, and that a lot of people, especially here in the United States, it feels like to me, my neighbors and, people in this kind of upper middle class stratus, that they, we had our first dose of inflation, but that if we get another wave that comes through, right, and maybe, who knows, it could be a black swan type event, anything could be a catalyst for this, that people are really going to wake up to the fact that they need to do something to protect their wealth outside of, the traditional bank accounts or money market CDs, that type of thing. Any thoughts on that?
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement.
I'm skeptical when it comes to the price of silver significantly reacting to a resurgence in inflation. And the reason I say that is, I mean, let's just look what's happened over the last 4 years. We've had significant levels of inflation. If you add it all up, you're talking about levels of 30% and more in most countries around the world. Yet we haven't seen the price of silver react to that in the same way the price of gold has. And that's why I'm skeptical with respect to that. And the other thing that makes me a bit skeptical on the inflation narrative, and it's not that I don't think that we're going to see a resurgence in inflation, or that Americans are in specific are going to see a resurgence in inflation, because Ron, I think they will, because one of my main thesis, I should say, for the price of silver and gold doing very well in 2024 is, as rates start to get cut, we're going to see a further decline in the value of the US dollar relative to other foreign currencies. Now, considering the fact that a significant portion of what Americans consume is imported, that has to have an impact on the price of things that people consume. But I work in fast-moving consumer goods, and I know how these supply chains work. And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to see that trickle into the economy until about 4 to 6 months after the adjustment in the value of the US dollar relative to the goods that are being imported, relative, I should say, to the other currencies. So when I say that, I do believe that some temporary uptick in inflation is going to happen. However, where I'm skeptical on this long term is when I look at the M2 money supply. Okay? Because if you want to know what's going to happen in inflation, you follow the money supply. And we are seeing the money supply, that, as measured by M2, contract right now. And just as we saw a massive takeoff during the C19 times, which, in my opinion, that was the catalyst, that was the fuel that fueled inflation paired with out of control government spending. I think with the M2 money supply coming in, we're going to see those inflation numbers start to at least level out. I don't necessarily see them coming back down anytime soon to the Fed's target of 2%. And that's driven by out of control government spending, which has continued. But I still don't think we're going to see numbers, even above 5% anytime soon, for the reason of the M2 money supply contracting. So I don't necessarily think, if I'm trying to pull all of these pieces of information in, I don't necessarily see this as a major influencing factor with respect to how the price of silver is going to develop over the next year or two.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think will be the biggest factor driving the silver price, let's say in the next 12 to 24 months, or factors? Any thoughts on that?
In US dollar terms, I can say that once the rate cuts start to happen, the Fed, I think, is going to have to aggressively cut rates, because if we look at the macroeconomic situation, not only in the United States, but globally, things are getting worse all around. The numbers we're seeing in a lot of the labor data that's being shared in mainstream media, it's total BS. It doesn't reflect the reality of what people either in the USA or around the world are living, which is having to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet. And as the situation continues to deteriorate, I think the Fed is going to have to aggressively cut rates. And this is going to bring the dollar, the value of the dollar, again, as I said, relative to other foreign currencies, down, pushing the dollar price of commodities up. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to trigger something psychologically in the mind of many investors, who are mainly tracking the value of commodities in US dollar terms. And once they start to see the price of silver breach and move above $30 an ounce, once we start to see gold moving towards my $2,400 price target that I expect to see within the next 12 months, that is when investors are going to start piling into it, because they're seeing these new price levels being hit in US dollar terms. And it's going to create an avalanche of money coming into commodities, specifically into metals, which is going to push metals into a cycle similar to what we saw in 2011.
Yep. Well, when that avalanche hits, bald guy, I'm gonna invite you here to the basement because we're gonna have a good time. A big party.
I'd love to come.
Yeah, I mean, and when you talk about all these factors coming at us here, I mean, we're already in 2024. But when you look at what could happen this year, you have this bank term funding program that may or may not be extended. You have the reverse repo slush fund that's being drained. You have a very contentious political situation, social situation in the United States. You have the BRICS that are de-dollarizing. Just a lot of factors. It's impossible for any of us to put it all together, but I think what we try to do is look at the big picture and see the forest through the trees. And I guess I'll end with this question. When you think about silver, when I think about silver, I think about like generational wealth, something that I can hold on to that will provide value for generations to come. I feel good about it. I really see it as an asymmetric opportunity, right? Like the value could temporarily drop a little bit depending on how you want to measure it, but over a long period of time, that it's going to hold its value. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. If you look at a lot of the data that I've even personally analyzed, going back to 1971, when, as Robert Kiyosaki likes to say, I'm a guy who's read a lot of his books. And, he always says from 1971, that's when the new rules of money came into play. When the fiat dollar wasn't backed by anything anymore, it became debt. And if we track the purchasing power of silver, as we discussed last time, again, this is kind of like a battery in a way, right? That said, to anybody watching this, relying solely on this, I would seriously urge those people to also consider this. And I hope the color's showing. I have another one here. I got a maple leaf and a Krugerrand. These are gold coins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we're looking at the performance since 1971, sure, there have been some real fireworks with some amazing blow-off tops for silver along the way. But if we're looking at a consistent performer that has consistently preserved and protected wealth, I wouldn't forget about gold. And that's why when I'm putting money, I'm deciding how much of the money that I'm earning today I'm allocating between gold and silver. I'm putting about, for simplicity's sake, about 75% of that money into gold and about 25% of that money into silver. Now, I'm confident that both are going to protect me over the long run. However, if I run into a situation where I'm in a situation where I'm kind of being forced to cover some expenses, to liquidate something, I know I can always count on this to be in a place where I'm not worrying whether or not I'm selling it at a loss, because over time, again, as I said, this has consistently delivered positive returns versus inflation, and has done very well even when you measure it versus things like the S&P 500.
Fortuna Silver Mines is a global intermediate gold and silver producer. Since 2005, Fortuna's best-in-class management has delivered impressive growth and profits. Fortuna's solid financial position and operational expertise allows for performance in any precious metals price cycle and provides a foundation from which to harvest great profits in more favorable metals markets. Investing in Fortuna is an investment in quality, long-term sustainable production of in-demand precious and base metals.
Silver can definitely be a bit more volatile. I like to describe it as the dramatic little brother or sister to gold. can be prone to temper tantrums. Well, Roger, excuse me. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you look at the silver charts in some particular moments, it almost looks like a cryptocurrency, right? That said, there's no doubt when you're measuring the price of silver versus the price of actual things you buy in a store, and I've done it in past videos, this is proven over long periods of time to keep up with that. I know the gallon of gasoline example. In other videos, I've covered the cost of peanut butter. I've covered the cost of clothing, how this has kept up with those things. So yes, this does a great job. And if you're, in the least stacking silver, I think you're going to be all right over the long term.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Bald Guy, for joining us today. You're definitely the smartest guy in the room. If people want to learn more about you, I'll encourage my viewers to go to Bald Guy Money YouTube channel. Is that the best way to reach you or to get your content?
Absolutely. That's the best place to go. Bald Guy Money. And there's a lot of content there for people to learn from. And I really appreciate you, having me on and allowing me to plug my channel too, Ron. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I also have to mention here, and I'll put their commercial in during our video, but we are both sponsored by Pimbex, and I like to joke around and say you're the celebrity spokesman for Pimbex. But if you're looking to get your hands on any of that silver or gold that Bald Guy held up, check out Pimbex, the online bullion dealer.
Yeah, and you want to know what, Ron? We are both working with Pimbex, and what I can also say is that I don't think people should underestimate them with respect to IRAs, because I know you mentioned the celebrity thing in the context of IRAs, and actually that's kind of a hot topic right now in metals, because I've seen another video where somebody who used to work with some of these IRA companies kind of exposed their bad habits, selling collector coins to people way above what the spot price would be, changing the spreads when they're buying and selling to benefit the company at the expense of the person's retirement account. And I think our partner Pimbex does a much better job and a more honest job than a lot of these celebrity IRA companies.
Yeah. You want to, what I encourage people to do is, if you're considering doing an IRA conversion, shop around and compare what you're getting, because you want to get the most metal for your money, not the most money for your metal. And I agree with you. I know that from feedback I've received from many of my viewers, exclusively, I've received positive feedback regarding Pimbex, and from a customer service perspective and a price perspective. I mean, you really can get more metal for your money. So have a great day, Bald Guy, and we will look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much, Ron, for having me.